All right, let's talk Dallas Cowboys. I'm Nick, and this is our daily Cowboys channel. A lot of great news to get into today. Preseason football finally arriving for the Dallas Cowboys this evening. We got Cowboys against Los Angeles Rams. Start to see what some of these young guys are really looking like against some live competition in a real game. We'll get to all of that, all of the news, plus your comments in just a second. But let's get things started with a little palate cleanser, as I like to say, a little stat of the day, a little chart of the day to get things going. So I had seen a discussion online talking about who would you rather be in the NFC East between Washington and New York, specifically the Commanders and the Giants, and the Cowboys being the Cowboys they got looped into as well. Commanders said, listen, they'd rather be what they are. They won 12 games last year, made it to the conference championship game. Giants fans said, yeah, it's been bad, but we at least have a Super Bowl this century, right? And then of course you got Cowboys fans. Well, at least we're not as bad as Dallas. That's what the Washington, New York fans were saying. I thought that was kind of interesting. So when I pull up this graphic here, and this is just kind of an interesting thought experiment. This is the wins the last 15 seasons in the NFC East. You got Dallas on the left, and then New York and Washington on the New York in the middle, Washington on the right. And it just made me think, I'm just kind of throwing this out there. You see how much more wins, we're talking like 35, 40 more wins Dallas had than New York and Washington. So would you trade, and now this is over the past 15 years, so this is kind of cherry picked. I kind of picked a random, going back. I wanted to make sure to capture the Giants' last Super Bowl run, but I didn't want to go back like 50 years. So I kind of just picked 15 years. It's a little arbitrary, I'll admit, but it's a nice round number. But when I looked at these numbers, and it just made me think, would you trade 40 more wins for one appearance in the last 15 years, like Washington has in the NFC Championship game? Would you be Washington with all of the chaos and all the losing they've done over the past 15 seasons to have one magical trip to an NFC Championship game to lose by, 31, to have 55, an NFL record 55 points dropped off you in an NFC Championship game? I wouldn't. Maybe you would. Let me know in the comment section below. But I'd rather be Dallas for the last 15 years than Washington, even though Washington has a trip to the NFC Championship game. I mean, if you trade circumstances, would you rather deal with 40 more Sundays of just being disappointed for one trip to an NFC Championship game where you get embarrassed and humiliated and blown out? I'd rather be Dallas, right? Maybe you disagree. Where it gets interesting is the Giants comparison, because the Giants, again, a little bit worse than Washington in win total, but they've got one championship. So this is another interesting question. Would you trade 40 more wins over the course of a time period? We're talking 3 more Sundays per year, basically, where you end on a good note, you're happy. You won a football game, 3 more Sundays where you're a little more upset, Dallas lost, for one season where you won a Super Bowl. This is an interesting one. I'd probably trade, totally honest, just to get one more ring. But it's an interesting debate, and it brings up a lot of good points. What would you rather see? More wins, significantly more wins. We're talking 40 more wins over the course of a 15-year period, 3 wins per season, basically, for one ring. It's sort of the tank debate come to real life here, even if the Giants weren't intentionally tanking a lot of these years. I think it's a very interesting thought here, just kind of walking through this experiment. Would you rather be Dallas with all the extra winning with the postseason, disappointment, or would you rather be the Giants with nothing but losing pretty much in one magical season? And same thing with Washington, nothing but losing in one magical season. It's an interesting debate. Curious what you guys have to say. All right, let's get into the news here. Let's pull up this first report, courtesy of Joseph Hoyt. New Phil Mafah, the Dallas Cowboys young rookie running back, not named Jaden Blue. Phil Mafah spent the majority of his final season at Clemson playing with a torn labrum. That's not fun. Ouch. I agree, especially for someone who specializes in physicality. He told me he's ready to play free and physical tomorrow. More on the running backs before the Los Angeles Rams. Yeah, Mafah's one of the guys to watch for me in the first preseason game. And we'll get to the first preseason game in detail in just a minute. But I think when you look at this Cowboys running back room, the long-term trajectory, and I know a lot of people have been excited about the culture Schottenheimer's put in and a lot of these young guys. 2025, in my opinion, this is just my thought, is going to be a sort of a transition year for Dallas. I'm looking at 2026, 2027 as these new guys, new culture really sets in. And I look at Mafah and Jaden Blue being the thunder and the lightning of a two-headed monster running attack. Potentially, Mafah's got to live up to the thunder part. Physical guy, short yardage, fall forward after contact, right? Sort of like Marion Barber, if we're going back, 10, 15 years at this point. Actually, about 15, almost 20 years at this point. Man, it's been a while. So I want to see him kind of showcase some of those skills. And he's an interesting guy to watch. Definitely one of the guys to keep an eye on. I hope he gets a lot of carries. I want to see a lot of Phil Mafah against the Rams. All right, the next report here is from Nick Harris at the Fourth Word Star Telegram. You should give him a follow. He's a great reporter. Cowboys have signed running back Malik Davis to the roster per team official. They have moved offensive guard, Rob Jones, neck fracture, to season-ending injured reserve. So there was a chance that maybe Jones could return the second half of the regular season sometime, but the Cowboys looked at it, evaluated, veteran guy, hey, listen, shut it down. Let's open up the roster spot, have Jones be a mental, sounding board, just another voice for Booker to get better as a starting guard. So disappointing into the season for Jones, but hopefully he can still continue his mentorship for Booker. I think he will. All reports say that he will. And the addition of Malik Davis, look, that's just filling out a roster right now that has some injuries. I think Malik Davis has been with Dallas. He knows the situations. He knows how to practice. He knows a lot of the coaches on the offensive side of the ball, at least Schottenheimer, I should say it like that. Again, good veteran guy. He's a camp body. I would not read too much into it. They just need veteran bodies that can execute an NFL offense. One of the things that happens during training camp and preseason, when you have injuries, you don't want to bring in just an undrafted free agent rookie who doesn't know the offense and doesn't know how to be an NFL player, and then you're trying to evaluate players around them, and that young guy keeps screwing up, right? So if you want to bring in a camp body, you want to bring in a guy who knows how to play football at the NFL level. So let's say you're trying to evaluate, your third string, fourth string quarterback or whatever it is, your offensive line in the running game. You don't want to bring in some guy who's just not an NFL player, a young guy trying to figure it out in his own right, because he's going to make mistakes, and then it's going to be hard to evaluate the other players. You bring in a veteran so that way he can operate at a baseline level, so that you can evaluate everybody else. Smart roster move here by Dallas. Some teams screwed up. Some teams, hey, a roster spot opened up. Let's see if we can roll the dice on another undrafted free agent steal. This time of year, when you're heavy into evaluation, go with guys you know can produce. Malik Davis can do that. He's not a star. I think he's a camp body that's basically at maximum. But again, good job bringing in a guy who can actually fundamentally execute the offense and allow you to evaluate the rest of the players. All right, next story is from Tommy Yarish. He posted on X. Brian Schottenheimer says the Cowboys were scheduled to only wear pads for the first 2 periods of practice. Yesterday, we're talking August 7th. When Schottenheimer called the team up to move to shells, his players told him, no, we're not backing off the fact that we're going to be a physical football team. So for anyone who's unfamiliar, shells is just shoulder pads and helmet with no pads and pants. So, it was this way when I played collegiately. I never played professionally or anything like that, but I bet it's sort of similar. There's a mindset shift completely between the 3 sets of gear you wear at practice, right? There's helmets only, which is, very not physical at all in terms of what, you're not tackling or anything like that. You're not cut blocking. You're not even remotely considering bringing anybody to the ground. It's actually even hard to really strike anybody. There's shells with helmets and shoulder pads, which, again, you're not bringing anybody to the ground. You're not hitting below the waist or anything like that. But, you're striking a little bit, but you're trying to stay up as much as possible. It's more just about fit and things like that, thudding it up. And then full pads, just full go, just maybe not bring them to the ground if you can avoid it, right? And that different mentality shift is really important, because I remember going into practice and my teammates were the same way. If helmets were the practice, it was more of okay, this is a mental day. If you had shells on, it was, okay, it's a mental day, but the coaches want to see some strike. If it's a full pads day, it's let's go. This is a big deal. This is a really important practice. And I think that's what the Cowboys, if you listen to the players and what Schottenheimer's saying here, says, listen, we need more big deal moments. We need to be more competitive. We need to figure out our problems. This is just an emblematic symbol of the culture Schottenheimer is building. We're talking, hey, we're going to be more physical. We're going to have more, aggressive days at camp. We're going to be a mentally and physically tougher football team. One of the reasons I think he was hired is because whether it was Garrett or McCarthy, this was a team undisciplined. They had talent, but a lot of times we're not mentally tough. To be totally honest, their physically tough elements were mainly because of players. We're looking at guys like Zach Martin, for example, Ezekiel Elliott, that just brought that mentality. I think this is a Cowboys team now that from the top to the bottom, much more favor of contact, much more favor of physicality. I like to see it because as you transition from a team that was basically a West Coast offense pass rush only team last year to a pound the football, play action, want to be tougher team defensively, I think this is a really good sign. Love to see this kind of culture continue to seep in among the Cowboys. All right, chugging right along here. This next report is courtesy of John Machota over The Athletic. CeeDee Lamb, when asked which Cowboys DVs have given him hell in training camp, he said, honestly, none of them. They haven't given me hell, but I will say it's great competing with these guys. Yeah, I love this from your star, right? One of the things that I always get, not annoyed by isn't the right word, but a little maybe amused when a team star player who's clearly better than everybody else at that position group, that element of the team, sits there and says, oh yeah, this rookie or this backup, he's a really good player. and then that rookie or backup thing never does anything in his career. And it's like, well, okay, you're just paying lip service, right? Come on, like you can be a little confident about yourself, have a little bit of swagger. I want to have my receivers and DBs and those kind of players have a little swagger, right? Quarterback's a little different. You got to be like the CEO. You got to be the PR guy. You got to handle all that. I get that. Wide receiver, corners. I want to see some confidence, right? Let's see a little smack talk. And this isn't arrogance. This isn't like cockiness. This is, hey, they're just not giving me any hell. They can't do anything with me. And we saw it's just not the Cowboys, right? He torched the Rams in their joint practice. So CeeDee Lamb did. So I love seeing this from Lamb. Again, that confidence, that swagger, that mentality. We're starting to see that in the Cowboys pass catchers again. Ferguson bringing it back, that old thing he had a couple years ago. Pickens brings it in spades, right? Turpin doing some good things. Tolbert fighting long. I mean, this is a much more confident passing game than honestly I think we've seen since maybe 2021, right? In 2023, they were learning McCarthy's thing. They figured it out at the end of the year, but I honestly felt that was more Dak Prescott having a killer year and spamming CeeDee Lamb. 2024 was a debacle, right? 2022, Dak got hurt early in the year, and there was just some issues there. They, trying to figure things out. Michael Gallup coming back from injury, right? It was just a tough year. I think this is the most confident we've seen a Cowboys pass catching group since 2021, ready to explode into a lot of good things. That was a high powered offense. Really excited what we're seeing with these pass catchers here. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. If there's one position group on this offense that's championship caliber, it's this pass catching group. This group and their pass rush on defense and the special teams, I'll throw that in there as well, are the three categories of this team that are championship caliber right now. You got to give credit to the Cowboys front office for getting it done. This is one of the best pass catching groups in football. Obviously, they've got other holes to fill, other issues on this team, but Lamb, Pickens, and the rest of these guys really doing well, executing at a high level. Okay, this next report is courtesy of John Machota as well, again with the same interview with CeeDee Lamb. Machota posted, Cowboys wide receiver CeeDee Lamb when asked for his reaction to the Micah Parsons trade request. I feel like he's going to be here. Reaction was crazy. A little disappointed in the process, but it is what it is. You got to do what you got to do, and he's going to do what's best for him and his family. So it's important to understand from a player's perspective. And look, I've never been a player in the National Football League that's, had a teammate go through a contract negotiation. But I think I have, and probably most of you have seen at least a similar kind of thing play out in the office where there's a good employee or a good manager that's a little disappointed and, he's trying to negotiate a promotion or a pay raise or whatever it may be, or a transition to a better part of the business, whatever it is. And it's, there's a little awkwardness, but everyone understands it's a business, right? It doesn't slow down what you do in your day to day. I think when you hear conversations about people in the media say, oh, this is going to hurt the locker room, it's people that have never been in a corporate environment. It's people that have never been in a locker room. You know what hurts a locker room? Like, at least from my experience, I'll just speak from my experience. The only thing that hurts a locker room at all is losing, right? That's it, right? Otherwise, everything's great in the locker room, right? There is no, this thing, this contract dispute, it's a distraction in the locker room. Guys, you don't have time for distractions at training camp. You don't have time for distractions when you're practicing for game week. There's so much information, so much stuff coming at you. And then when these guys are adults and they have real life problems, at least when I was in college, my problems were not, real life the way, you don't have a mortgage, maybe kids at home you got to deal with or whatever it may be. You got real life problems. You've got, getting ready for the game week. You got film you got to study, packages to learn, training camp. It's nothing but football. You don't have time for distractions. The only thing that distracts a locker room or hurt a locker room is losing, because that gets frustrating. You're putting in a lot of time and effort and you still lose. That can weigh you down. When people in the media say, oh, is this Parsons thing going to be a locker room distraction? Nobody thinks it's going to be a distraction when it comes to the players and they themselves. The only issue would be Parsons physically not playing or not being ready to play. That is the only risk, to be totally honest. A locker room distraction ain't going to happen. All right, last report here. This is sort of a fun one from Schottenheimer, courtesy of @VoiceOfTheStar. Another good follow. I reserve the right to change my mind, but there's a handful of guys who won't play in the preseason opener. There's certain guys who we don't need to see play in this first game, but that could change going into the next one. I like this approach, right? I mean, I don't think... I always, to put it this way, I hate when coaches say we're not going to play any starters or we're going to play the starters. I always sit there and say, I don't want to see, I don't want you to treat it like a regular season game, like a warm-up. I want you to treat it like an evaluation process. I want you to figure out which specific players are doing well, which ones aren't. Because you're not going through a game plan. You're doing a lot of vanilla stuff. It's a weird game. You talk to NFL players that are starters in the preseason. They say it's such a weird experience because it's like a half game. The adrenaline, the excitement, the energy is just not nearly the same as it is in a regular season game. Not even close. So it's very much like a fake dress rehearsal. So you're not running a real complicated offense. You didn't do any game planning. So in a lot of ways, I hate when teams play the starters. I hate going through that motion because it's not actually a dress rehearsal. You're not going through a weekly game plan process and then going through all the walkthroughs and all of that and then playing a first few plays of a preseason game or a quarter or whatever it is and then you're done. It's much worse than that. It's not even a good replication of what the regular season will be like. So I hate getting that bad habit in place for a whole unit. Individual players, though, that you want to evaluate, you want to see how they do, that's a different story. I say it all the time. That's what preseason should be used for. And what I think it should be used for is evaluating individual players, not position groups, not teams as a whole. And with that in mind, let's get into the Cowboys and the Rams, obviously first preseason game this evening. So let's talk about what we want to see this evening in this game and put in the comment section below what you want to see. I already hit on one of the things. I want to see a lot of Maffa touches. I want to see if he's as physical, as tough, as a hard-nosed runner as advertised. For me, what this game is really going to come down to is can Childress, the defensive back, the young defensive back that's been doing good things in training camp, can he translate that to a live environment? Because, boy, has he been impressive. He's proven me like totally wrong. I thought he was a camp body guy exclusively, and he's just been really fantastic. So I've been 100% wrong there. He's crushing it. He's having a great camp. I want to see what he looks like in live action. If you get some of these if you get like Tyler Booker or Donovan Ezeraku, I think Ezeraku will play. We'll see if Booker plays. I hope he does. I want to see what they look like in the first preseason game. I want to see one of the things I look for when it comes to players that are early round, first, second round guys. I want you to show some flashes in the preseason, right? You don't have to dominate. You don't have to look like an all-pro. But give me some flashes that you're going to be a good player. And if they have one bad preseason game against the Rams, I'm not going to write them off. But over the course of these preseason games, I want to see just some flashes. Okay, you're a first-round pick. I see it. You're a second-round pick that people are high on. I see it. So I want to see those flashes. I want to see those moments. So for me, those are the three things I'm looking for. I want to see Phil Maffa be physical. I want to see Childress, the defensive back who's dominating camp out of nowhere from Kentucky, see what he looks like against live competition. And I want to see the first and second round, that top tier guys. I'll even throw Shamar James in there, even though he wasn't a first or second rounder. I'm a big fan of his, so I want to see him as well. But I want to see some of these bigger name guys have some flashes of their playmaking ability, of their talent. I want to see that execute on an NFL stage. So that's what I'm looking for in this preseason game against the Rams. Put what you are looking for in the comment section below, and then we'll talk about it over the days that follow, what happened versus what we saw and what it means going forward. Sorry, just hit the TV there, or the table there. All right, let's get into the comments from yesterday. There's a lot of great comments. I'm going to try and work through these as fast as I can. This first one is from Cowboys Chad 5x778. Talking about the defensive backfield, I had hopes for Childress and Justin Barron. We are good at finding diamonds in the rough. I mean, I was high on Barron. I thought he had a good chance. I was high on Elijah Clark too, still am. But Childress has just been an incredible surprise to the upside. So again, he's just an incredible story. Definitely a guy to watch. This next one is from Mighty Pepino 76, talking about the alleged handshake deal between Parsons and Jerry Jones. Posted, handshake, stop it. I'm old school too. In 2025, in a billion-dollar business, these agents are getting paid millions for a reason. You don't hire an accountant to do your own taxes. That whole I bought the Cowboys for the handshake is pure bull. There was a written and signed document before the handshake. This isn't us making a football bet and shaking on it. This is a multi-million-dollar deal, and the delusional Jones boys think they can work this way. Anyways, great show. I enjoy listening and agree with you most of the time, but no way is a handshake deal worth crap in the National Football League. You may be right. I don't know. Like I said, my experience is not in making million-dollar deals. It's in buying a home, right? Or selling a home or negotiating a pay raise or something like that. And just in my experience, there's been more of those handshake kind of deals. Again, I have no idea what big deals. I have no idea how a billionaire operates. I'm not a billionaire, not even close. I'm not a millionaire. But, I'm just saying there's a chance maybe that actually is how it works. Because in my weird day job, there is a lot of that kind of handshake, hey, your word is your bond kind of stuff. But if that's not the case in the NFL or in the rest of the real world, I totally understand it, right? I work in an older industry in my day job, so I could totally get that. Good comment, thanks. This is from Miss Felony Strutter 2472. Really good commenter. Really appreciate what you put out there. I disagree at a certain timestamp, only in this sense on yesterday's video. They made a very serious run on safety in the undrafted free agent market. They wanted young kids who would push the veterans. Also, I feel like I come from another world at times. You have no idea growing up in the Landry era, the quality safeties we had. My two all-time favorite Cowboys are safety Charlie Waters, who was a corner too, by the way, and Bill Bates. A little bit different era there. Bill Bates, Tennessee, right? Safety, special teams, and became a safety, or was a safety, but started on special teams with Dallas. You look throughout our history from Mike Gector, Cliff Harris, Michael Downs, Dexter Klingsdale, Dennis Thirdman, Vince Albritton. Our safeties were playmakers, ball hawks, and the best blitzers and the best blitz scheme in the leagues. In the Jerry Jones era, oh my gosh, I feel like as though we've only had 4 great safeties: Woodson's, Brock Marion, James Washington, and George Teague. The jury is out on how exactly Roy Williams is remembered. Goes on from there, bringing in the safeties. Talking about Malik Hooker being a huge disappointment. Yeah, I think you bring up a very good point in terms of the Cowboys using undrafted free agents to push some of these guys. I'm thinking Donovan Wilson explicitly. Malik Hooker is an interesting because he's sort of been okay, right? And not paying him like super top dollar. He's reportedly, like I talked about the other day, Eberflus likes the Eberflus scheme. So I want to see Donovan Wilson get pushed because he came in 2020 kind of like these young guys as sort of a playmaker, flying around, forcing takeaways, rough around the edges, and he's gotten more rough around the edges and has started producing less plays. I want to see some of these young guys, like Barron here, a great example of this. Elijah Clark, not Barron Clark here. Childress, safety a little bit in college, but they have him at nickel right now competing. I want to see some of these, these other guys push a guy here like Donovan Wilson explicitly. I think Hooker's probably safe. They want some stabilizing veteran presence in the back end of the defense. Let's see here. Let me go through. This is from Monte Murdoch 5032. I'm trying to there's some people that commented multiple times, so I try and spread it out so I touch everybody's comments. So if you commented 5 times, I only touch one of your comments, that's why. Monte Murdoch 5032 posted, Nick, great podcast as usual. Did you catch the interview with Steve Shimko, the quarterback coach? I did not. After hearing that, I'm not as confident as I was before about leadership quality being vital to success of quarterbacks. Can football intelligence of a player actually override his lack of leadership skills? I think they're the same, right? So if you talk about what leadership is, at least my opinion, leadership is basically 2 things when it comes to football. Number 1, knowing what needs to be communicated to your teammates. And number 2, effectively communicating that, right? Leadership isn't rah-rah, isn't, breaking down, isn't yelling at people at the sideline or getting people hyped before practice. That's not leadership, right? When I played, there was a lot of guys that were, very rah-rah guys, very, the coaches loved it. They said, yeah, that's right, energy. And the 99% of us would roll our eyes at their guy and make fun of him, sometimes to his face, because it's like, dude, it's fake. It's not real. You're trying to be a rah-rah. You're a brown-noser, essentially. Shut up, right? The real leaders are guys that know what needs to be communicated and know how to effectively communicate it. And those 2 attributes require intelligence, right? And require football intelligence, not X's and O's intelligence, but emotional intelligence, locker room intelligence, situational intelligence, all that kind of stuff. So, I think intelligence matters. And usually if you have that kind of emotional intelligence and that kind of high level, personal intelligence with people, then you're also probably pretty good at X's and O's as well, right? When people talk about football intelligence, personally, this is my opinion, I kind of roll my eyes a little bit because it's like, listen, it's football, the plays, the schemes. It's a lot of jargon. If you're not familiar with it, it sounds pretty daunting. But the reality is it's designed and structured for the lowest common denominator. So if someone else, someone who doesn't know football hears, I'm just going to make something up here, F right, shift to brown left 364, Y smash, F alert, whatever, then people are like, whoa, what is that? I just made up some play there, so just ignore that. But like, you're like, whoa, that's crazy. That must be really hard. But all of that is structured to like be for the lowest common denominator of a person who may not be the smartest guy to understand a play, right? Because everyone playing in the National Football League or collegiately or high school, right? You have the full gambit from really stupid or really smart. You've got to structure plays to handle both sides of that spectrum there. So again, football intelligence, I think, is a little bit overblown in the media. I kind of look for emotional intelligence, locker room intelligence, people intelligence. And if you have that level of intellectual powerhouse, you can be a good leader. Because if you understand those things, if you're a smart guy and understand what needs to be communicated and how to communicate it, you'll do a great job as a leader. Just my 2 cents there. This is from Dayon 2001. Posted Zion Childress is a dog. Watch his highlights. He was tackling players that went drafted like nothing. Yeah, you're right. I did go back and watch his highlights when I saw this comment in Kentucky, and he's a physical dude. My goodness gracious. I don't know how I missed him, so credit. A lot of you guys said, listen, this guy's a dude. You should watch him. And I kind of like, I don't know. But now I see more of him. Like, you guys had a point there. So good point. You guys are right on the money. Draymond87 posted, Jerry Jones and the Cowboys organizations are the ones signing the checks. Micah's agent is just being greedy and needs to be fired. He's a leech. This team will have more than 8 wins and will make the playoffs. DC for life. How about them Cowboys? Yeah, I think there's, well, I mean, you said Jerry Jones and the Cowboys are signing the checks. They are going to write a check for hundreds of millions of dollars. So that is a good point to bring up, right? People get mad at Jerry Jones, but Jerry Jones is the one actually writing the check, right? You and I aren't actually going to be sending Micah Parsons $150 million. Now, collectively, with all the stuff we buy and watching and on Sunday Ticket and all that money that ends up going to Jerry Jones, all of us collectively are contributing, but it is Jerry Jones who's writing the check when it's all said and done. That is a fair point. I do think, I'm personally, and there's a few more comments about this, I do not like agents in the NFL the way it's structured. I think you should have legal representation to protect you as a player. I think you should have an accountant to handle financial things and tax implications. I don't think in today's world with internet, AI, Google, all these different things, there's so much open information, social media, you don't need to have an agent, right? In the old days, you had an agent because he could talk to other players, he could talk to owners and executives. He knew what things cost, he knew salary caps, even before there was a salary cap, he knew salaries, he knew how much money owners had, things like that, just through connections. Because of all the things I just mentioned, that information is all readily available. An agent doesn't provide nearly the same amount of value. To me, it's about legal representation. I'd rather have a really great lawyer than an agent. Put him on retainer for $1 million, have an accountant, a CPA on retainer for another $1 million, and for a guy like Micah Parsons, that saves a lot more than that 10% that you're giving to your agent right off the top. Just my 2 cents there. Good comment, Draymond. Appreciate it. Damon Blackfire 2049 posted, it's strange to quote someone's observations than to go out of your way to discredit them. I think talking about how one of the reporters was critical of Joe Milton not having the right touch on his throws. I'm just making my point here is that if you're a reporter, you don't have expertise. So like if Troy Aikman talked about, Joe Milton's touch, I would treat that very seriously. No, you can look at a player and say, oh, he's doing well or he's not, right? We can watch a quarterback and say, he's throwing a lot of incomplete passes or he's getting intercepted a bunch or whatever, right? We can look at it from a high level. But if you're going to fundamentally evaluate a player from a technical perspective, do it with more expertise than just, hey, I'm a reporter on the sideline and it needs more touch. That's my only point, right? These guys are great reporters. I say that all the time. I'm not trying to discredit them. I'm just saying, listen, if you say Milton's doing well, but I think he needs to improve technical aspect X, I want you to see and be an expert, right? It's a difference between the color commentator and the play-by-play. For these reporters, right, these guys boots on the ground, and most of them are fantastic. I want the play-by-play. For the color commentating, I want the experts. I want people that know. The Aikmans of the quarterback room, for example. That's all the point is that I'm trying to make. Delta 704, great commenter. Posted, I assume you agree that Jerry Jones has wasted seasons by not being aggressive enough with the cap. Over the past 30 years, what do you think? What years do you think we could have won another ring had the Jones not been hoarding cap space money for no reason other than greed? 2014, I think, comes to mind. Look, I think he was so roasted by the Brandon Carr deal and so disappointed with the likes of, Tank Johnson and Adam Jones and the Roy Williams trade, from the Lions, that it just frustrated him and he just pivoted completely to draft and develop. And it worked. They won a lot of games, especially when they got past that 8-8 run and then 2014, 2016, and of course 17-18, right? And then, the last 5 years with the 3 straight 12-win seasons. So the draft and develop approach worked, but it capped their potential. I think 2014 to me is a season. Veteran quarterback playing the best football of his career, young talent across the board mixed with veterans, coaching staff that knew each other, good mentality, right, in terms of, just across the board in the locker room. They had all the pieces in place. That would have been the year or a year like that to go hyper-aggressive all in. The way the Eagles added Saquon Barkley, not saying Dallas needed to add another running back that year with DeMarco Murray, but those kind of players. That would have been the year to add another corner, add another edge rusher or whatever it may be. And they didn't because Jerry Jones and the Cowboys front office for so long look at the Brandon Carr deal, look at the Roy Williams trade and says, boy, those were debacles. We want to try and limit those downsides in the future. And they've done a great job limiting the downside. But like you mentioned here, they've limited the upside. And there's been so many good seasons. I look at 14. I look at, honestly, 18 had a lot of potential. They just clearly didn't have
enough defensive firepower. Even though they were good defense, they just didn't have quite enough playmakers to overcome the Rams. I look at 19 being one of the biggest wasted seasons in Cowboys history. I look at 21 and I look at 22. Just 21 less so because that was the first big year under Mike McCarthy. But 2022, the fact that they signed Ty Hilton in the middle of the T.Y. Hilton, in the middle of the season to kind of help shore up the receiving core, that was a problem. That was not an offseason. For example, they moved off Amari Cooper. Things like that frustrate me because the Cowboys were clearly in a win now opportunity. They always focused on the future, and I get that. They've won a lot of games, but at a certain point, if you've got a championship caliber team, be aggressive. And if it doesn't work, you can always reset. I agree with you 100%. Jerry Jones has definitely taken a lot of opportunities off the table for being, as weird as it is for him, for his background, way, way too conservative with the cap space. This next one is from Terrence Liebird 8655. It's going to be tough for Barron and Clark to make the team. Holden as well, talking about the receiver. Sometimes injuries give another player the chance to shine. Yeah, I agree. That's one of the things. There's always, and it's such a cliche, but people talk about it. Good football players get cut every single year, right? That's why you have a lot of these guys that get cut a few times and then catch on with another team and then do very well. Danny Woodhead, of course, is an example that gets brought up a lot, but there's a lot of examples. Famously, Kurt Warner was a guy that was, cut a bunch of times before finally settling in. There's a few Cowboys examples that are like that as well historically. I think C.J. Goodwin was one of those kind of players, if I remember correctly. But, I look at a guy like Clark, I just feel good about his chances, man, because that safety room with Donovan Wilson, I think especially, they're trying to move towards the future. They're trying to move younger, like we already talked about. I think Childress is doing some good things. I think it's going to be tough for Barron, personally. He's going to have to do some great special teams because I think Shamar James playing well and all of these other linebackers, Leofau stepping up, right? Unless there's some injuries like, Sanborn or Murray or some of these other guys get hurt, it's going to be really tough for Barron. I agree with you there. This is from M. Powell 4192. Excellent thread, information, and engaging perspective. This is by more intelligence in that, as an observer, I actually count you doing what you do best and all the intelligence. Love how you do not repeat and or regurgitate network reporting, especially Colin Cowherd with his game where he always has a slant mixed in with loads of linguistic fodder unseen by a seasoned observer. Thanks, bro. Keep it coming. Proud of all you do. Okay. Yeah, and I appreciate that. Thank you for the comment. Thank you for the nice words. I think one of the things that's kind of taken hold in the media right now, whether if you're covering a team or nationally, it's sort of an interesting dynamic where on TV you get the hot take artists that are really good. They look good on TV. They sound good. Colin Cowherd, Stephen A. Smith, great examples of that. They're much wealthier, much more wealthy, much more successful than I am by far, not even close. But the other side is you have these sort of team covering events like I'm kind of doing now, but it's very like hyper crazy over the top, right? I've seen some of it. I'm sure you guys have as well, where it's, oh my goodness, a Cowboys, just the other day, for example, Cowboys running back has a bad practice. Cowboys are about to trade for a running back, and that's just what they talk about and say, oh my, and they just go over the top. And it's like, where the heck did this come from? There's no reporting on that. There's no information. There's no evidence. What are you talking about? I think that's just something that's just gone into the media. I don't know if it's a clicks game, an engagement game, whatever it is, but I appreciate the comment. And again, all I'm trying to do is, talk about the news, talk about the reporting, provide as much information as I can. And hopefully you learn from me. And like I say, I'll learn from you guys as well. Stephen Van Over, great commenter as always. Thank you, Stephen. Zion Childress, FYI, played all 5 DB positions at Kentucky. That is amazing versatility and gives a player incredible game film in their head. At QB in high school, this is a football player who has history on both sides of the ball. I did not know that about the versatility. Well, I knew they moved around a little bit, but I didn't know all 5 DB positions. Plus, he was a quarterback. Yeah, this is a football player. I agree with you 100%. I was 100% wrong on 100%. A lot of people said look out for Childress. I said why, and I've been proven wrong. He's having a great camp. He's dominating. Want to see how he does against the Rams. And then finally, this is from Jocko Lone, or I'm sorry, I don't know exactly how to pronounce your handle there. I definitely would not need an agent to sign a contract when all the information of other people's recent contracts and contracts signed the previous year are available references. I will hire an agent to find me additional income outside of the NFL, promotions, acting appearances, charity works, tax write-offs, but 10% of something is worse than 100% of nothing at all in that instance, which makes sense. I've always took notice and love when players signed without a big-time agent, and I can't remember hearing that any ever blew it. Well, because even if you blow it, so let's say you sign a $100 million deal, even if you blow it and you're like, oh, you could have signed a $110 million deal. If you're a player and you sign a $100 million deal, an agent could have gotten you 110, an agent gets 10%, so you only pocketed 99 in that instance. So you didn't blow it. You actually did well. You got more money. So the agent has to provide all this extra value. I love your thought of using an agent for additional income outside of playing specifically, commercials, that kind of thing. That's a really great point. So that is another fair thing. Maybe you need a talent representative to handle the non-football, PR kind of things, advertising, business opportunities. Maybe instead of an agent, it needs to be a business representative that's on a commission basis in terms of not on your contract. And I think that's a player should go to. So I'm going to revise my earlier statement when I said all players need is a good lawyer for protection on retainer and a good accountant. Throw in there, a good talent representative, like you said here, to find good work opportunities outside of football. Doesn't all have to be an agent. But again, that's just my opinion. Great comment there. Really appreciate it. All right, that's all the comments I have time to get to today. Obviously went through a lot of them. I love what you guys put in the comment section. When I see you guys post, and it really gets me thinking, I want to see more of it. So fill up the comment section with all your thoughts, ideas, questions, concerns, and I'll do my best to get to them each and every show. Look, guys, we got real football this evening, exciting stuff. I know it's just preseason. Like I always say, don't focus too much on don't focus too much on team performance or unit performance. Don't get caught up in, O-line looks bad or defense looks great or special teams looks okay or whatever it is. Look at specific players. Again, put in the comment section below what you're looking for and then look for those kind of specific players. We'll talk about it more tomorrow in the coming days, and I will have film reviews breaking down a lot of these rookies via the All-22 also coming in a few days, so make sure you stay tuned for just that. But until next time, I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection.